So let's see here. Our opponent keeps, we keep. They lead with, okay, so we lead with Eldrazi Temple. So we're thinking Eldrazi Tron. And then they cast Eternal Scourge. So we can, I mean, you can't see this, but in the chat they used Simian Spirit Guide. So then, Eternal Scourge, if you haven't played against it, is a bit of an annoying card. If you try and kill it, it goes to exile, but they can just recast it over and over. So on my turn, though, I get a little confused because they still have 5 cards in hand, despite using a Temple. Again, they're on the play. So despite the Temple and the Simian Spirit Guide, they have an Eternal Scourge out. So they've used 3 cards, have 5 in hand, but they shouldn't draw since they're on the play. So after talking to my opponent for a minute to try and figure out what was going on, if we note the exile, they have 14 cards in exile. What they actually have here is Serum Powder, which is a 3-mana artifact that allows you to tap to add a colorless mana to your mana pool. But anytime you can mulligan and Serum Powder is in your hand, you may exile all the cards from your hand, then draw that many cards. So it's essentially like a free mulligan. Unfortunately, MTGO, in all its greatness, did not show me anything, neither in-game or in chat, or in the log rather, to indicate this happened. But they actually did this twice. So they redrew 7 cards, and then they Serum Powdered again for another 7 cards. So they exiled Thought-Knot Seer, Chalice of the Void, Simian Spirit Guide, 3 Serum Powders, 2 Eternal Scourges, a couple Dismembers, Waste, Gemstone, Caverns, Ghost Quarter, Endless One, again a couple Simian Spirit Guides. So that's a very interesting first play from our opponent. And so looking at this, I think, you know, we certainly don't know what they have, but there is some concern that they're going to go Chalice of the Void on us next turn. So I think we actually need to lead on Inquisition here. Since we're going to end up, we don't have any way to determine, or I guess adjust our draw due to a fetch with Bauble. I think we're just going to Bauble our opponent, then Inquisition them. So we actually see Eldrazi Mimic. So this is like just more like just the normal colorless, I guess not normal, more like the colorless Eldrazi that we had in Eldrazi Winter. So just not something you see every day, but an interesting use of Serum Powder here. So we're going to go ahead and play our Watery Grave. Take 2 life. And then we're actually going to get the Dismember out of their hand. So we know they're going to draw an Eldrazi Mimic. They haven't drawn it yet. The rest of their hand, Blink Moth, Reality Smasher, Serum Powder, and Mutavault. A lot of creatures, and they're looking like they're in a good position to get to that Smasher fairly soon. So we need a little help with our draws here. So on their turn, we're going to draw an extra Fatal Push. Something wrong with the art on Fatal Push. And play a Blink Moth, and then they're just going to cast another, where is it? Eternal Scourge from exile. So this is going to be very problematic to deal with. And they attack for 3 with the Eternal Scourge. And we whiff again here, so we're going to play another Mishra's Bauble. Take a look, we see that they're going to draw a Scavenger Grounds, which is a way to exile all the cards in both graveyards, which is something that can cause a problem to us. And then we Street Wraith and actually draw a second land, which is great. So we're able to play Bloodstained Mire here, and we can actually Fatal Push both these Scourges. However, not the greatest line, as the opponent can just recast these Scourges. And then with the Bauble trigger, we draw an extra Polluted Delta. And now my clock is a little lower than it should be, just because I had some confusion as to what was happening with these serum powders originally, since MTGO did not give me any notification. But here, after the opponent attacks, unfortunately we were hoping to get them to cast something and then remove these scourges so they didn't have them. But as it is, we're going to go after both of these scourges, and unfortunately the targeting will get them exiled, which again just allows them to recast them. And that's exactly what our opponent does here, is they cast another Eternal Scourge. Again, just very interesting use of Serum Powder. And if you look at, it's not just Serum Powder. So Serum Powder gives them that. They also have Gemstone Caverns, which allows them to exile a card from their opening hand. So if they're on the draw, they can play essentially a soul land by exiling the Eternal Scourges, and that's no mana, or that's no card disadvantage, because again, they can just cast it from exile. So best way to beat these is to discard them out of the hand or counter them. It's, you know, sometimes a board wipe could get rid of them as well, but you know, spot removal, not great. Anyway, so back to us. We can cast a Gurmag Angler here. Probably going to get a Steam Vents, right. Just to make sure we get red. We are pretty much in a position, looks like we're going to have to Temur Battle Rage over our opponent. So we're going to opt here, hoping to find a Shadow. We do find a Fatal Push, which I actually think we end up keeping on top here, because we are going to have to buy ourselves some more time. So we're just going to go Gurmag Angler, hold up the Fatal Push. Actually, we'll have to use the Fatal Push this turn. Otherwise, our opponent is going to, you know, we're not going to have a way to activate the Revolt Fatal Push. So we'll play our Gurmag Angler and then remove that Scourge again. Or I guess in this case we decided we can chump block the Scourge, so they're probably not attacking into us this turn. The opponent technically could cast Reality Smasher here, but they decided to go with Eternal Scourge again. Again, just a pain in the booty. And then they cast the Eldrazi Mimic as well. So they've used the Scavenger Grounds, the Mutavault, Blink Moth, and Eldrazi Mimic. So I think at this point we're actually just going to push the Mimic, be mana efficient. Probably realized they made a mistake, didn't want to make another mistake. A little different with the Dismember though. If we save the Dismember, we can get rid of the Reality Smasher. Though if we were to kill one of the Eternal Scourges or exile it right now, we actually could get another Angler down, but we'd have to put our life total at such a low life total to do both that we're going to have a problem with the Reality Smasher either way. So I think we're just in a position where we either want to play Dismember and pitch the Gurmag Angler, or hopefully snap a push here. So looking back, actually, I think this is probably a mistake. I think actually what I should have done there is just held the Gurmag Angler back and then planned to chump the potential Reality Smasher next turn with Snapcaster, blocking an Eternal Scourge, and then Fatal Push one of the Eternal Scourges, so we would have taken no damage and then been able to cast a Gurmag Angler the next turn. But again, just not really any good way to do anything right now. So opponent's going to cast the Reality Smasher here, and then they're going to go to combat. And again, this is a lethal attack, and so really all we can do is dismember our opponent's Reality Smasher, pitching a card, which I think we have to pitch a Gurmag Angler. Just hope to draw a relative or a relevant spell for Snapcaster Mage, probably like a Mishra's Bauble, or again, we're really in a position where we're going to need a Temur Battle Rage. So we actually draw a Temur Battle Rage there a little before we need it. We'd actually would have preferred to have a Mishra's Bauble or a either a Mishra's Bauble or maybe a fetch land. As it is, we really have no outs here. Not only the Eternal Scourge, our opponent has 2 mana lands. We could kind of hope for a lucky situation where they don't attack with both Eternal Scourge and we can Snapcaster to chump. However, the opponent does activate both of their man lands, and there's just nothing we can do here. And they attack, and we lose game. So we're going to go ahead and close that down. We'll go to game 2. And again, I know we prefer to watch matches live, but you know, it really wasn't an option in this case, unfortunately. So we're going to be on the play. If we go to the sideboard, we ended up cutting 2 Street Wraiths and a Bauble. We have 14 cards, so I was a little frustrated with MTGO not telling me anything about ceremony or about the serum powder, so I ended up spending my time in between the the sideboard actually messaging Magic Online, because it's pretty unacceptable that it gives you your opponent activates 2 serum powders and you have no clue. And so again, I spent nearly like 5 minutes trying to talk to my opponent to figure out what was going on, and they acted like I should have figured it out, which I mean I could have once I noticed there were 14 cards in exile. But the fact is, MTGO should have told me. If I was playing in paper, there's no reason why my opponent could have just been like, oh, I activated 2 serum powders, sorry you didn't realize that. So I was a little frustrated, and unfortunately kind of let the tilt get to me for a minute. So by the time I got back to it, I didn't have time to fully sideboard. So I ended up bringing in 2 Lilianas and a young Pyromancer, Liliana the Last Hope, in case I could kind of set up a board position where I protected Liliana the Last Hope and ultimated, which I do think is a valid way to try and beat some of these creature strategies. And then I also would have brought in, let's see, so those would have been the 4 cards I brought in, and then I pulled out a Bauble and 2 Street Wraiths. So I definitely feel like it would have been worth probably bringing in Ceremonious Rejection. Probably would have brought in the 4th Stubborn Denial. Maybe not. Maybe I'd have gone down to 2. The thing is the opponent showed not Engineered Explosives, but Chalice of the Void, which is really effective against this deck, and so against Grixis Death Shadow. And so having access to Stubborn Denial or like a Thoughtseized Inquisition, very important against Eldrazi decks with Grixis Shadow. I don't know, it seems like 2 or 3 probably would have been the right call. Definitely wouldn't do anything with Collective Brutality. Kozilek's Return unfortunately only does 2 damage, so not effective against the opponent. Neither is it Static Caster or Kolaghan's Command or Rakdos Charm. So really we may have just been in a situation where we brought in the Ceremonious Rejection as well, and then we could have done a little bit better with pulling cards out, which we didn't have enough time to do. So just try and, the old don't do what I do what I say. Try not to let tilt get you in the middle of a game. So it really cost me an optimal configuration against my opponent going into the second game. But sometimes you get lucky. So this is a terrible opening hand. No lands, that's a problem. Again, no lands. Alright, so we do have a one lander. We probably can't go a whole lot lower. We do have a Bauble Street Wraith. So 2 redraws. That's good. We're going to put Liliana on the bottom. We need mana more than Liliana right now. So we're going to go Bauble. And then we pass to our opponent. We just don't want to crack the Bauble unnecessarily here. We'd rather be able to Bauble our opponent and then, you know that top card right before we Thought Seize them, so we have perfect information. So we will now Bauble our opponent at this point, seeing a Seagate Wreckage on top of their library. Excuse me. And then draw a Blood Crypt and then an Opt for turn. So I think we want to Street Wraith first. Ideally, we're going to draw a blue land or a fetch land to go get blue. I think if we Street Wraith, fetch, Thought Scour, we could still cast Tasigur this turn. So go ahead and cycle the Street Wraith. Get another Street Wraith, that's fine. We'll cycle another one. Kind of want lower life total for our shadows anyway. But unfortunately we get a Snapcaster Mage, so we're just going to play Blood Crypt tapped. Since we don't have a Death Shadow, we don't want to run ourselves too low here. See what our opponent has. Eldrazi Temple. Ideally they don't have a Thought-Knot Seer. Of course they do. So Thought-Knot Seer, presumably they're going to take the Tasigur, as it's the best card we have right now. One of the few we could actually potentially cast. We do draw a Dismember though, which is not half bad. So if we can Dismember our Thought-Knot Seer and ideally draw into a blue mana source, we should be alright. Pay minimal life here just because, ideally we're going to draw a land. If we don't draw a land, we can't cast any of our cards anyway. So, dropped. So we're now kind of in a little bit of a pickle. And opponent casts a Chalice of the Void on 1. I've seen this story before. Doesn't go well for us. So, we could cast Inquisition of Kozilek here, but obviously we can't handle the Chalice. This is another one of those situations where, looking back, I would have definitely brought in Rakdos Charm and Kolaghan's Command as ways to handle a Chalice on 1. Again, just the versatility of that card is really good, but because I tilted in between matches, or in between games, I didn't get a proper sideboard. So again, just trying to stress the importance of trying to keep yourself in check and not let yourself get distracted in the middle of a match. Pretty cool deck though by the opponent. Good use of Serum Powder. I actually like Serum Powder. My buddy and I have talked about how it seems like a card that eventually is just going to be busted in some manner. Makes me want to go look at other cards that can be played for value with Eternal Scourge, rather. Like Eternal Scourge. And so then they double Chalice, so now we're really in a pickle. Even if we had a... so actually, like, looking at this now, probably even bring Echoing Truth in. Again, you could cause Eternal Scourges to flicker potentially, although I guess when you target the first one, it would disappear. So Echoing Truth would probably fizzle and not get multiples. However, again, returning Chalice of the Voids could be good if it allows you to set up like an Inquisition, or Inquisition Thoughtseize, or Inquisition Stubborn line. If you can return those Chalices and buy yourself a turn to kind of move forward with your own game plan. Here, we're going to play Bloodstained Mire, and I think we actually just want to fire off the Inquisition. We can't do anything with it right now. But what it can do is it can set us up potentially to be in a position where, we can cast a Gurmag Angler later. So, I guess maybe we didn't. We decided to Thought Scour there instead, but it's the same concept. Basically just building it up so that we could potentially cast like a Gurmag Angler and Shadow in a single turn later. Although we can't really cast Shadow with Chalice on 1, and we don't have any answers in our deck, unfortunately, save Liliana of the Veil. Ratchet Bomb makes things even worse, as Ratchet Bomb is very effective against Shadows, but again, right now we can't get them down either way. Actually, tell my opponent that they should pop those Ratchet Bombs right now, since they would blow up the Chalices. They refrain. But we peel a card of great relevance now. So Young Pyromancer can actually buy us quite a bit of time, and with the spells we have in hand, we can actually start creating tokens. In case we're going to go ahead and play Inquisition. It gets countered, we know it's going to get countered, but it gives us a token to buy us some time. And we're set up where we could do this with Ops next turn, or we could Snapcaster Mage Inquisition to buy us even more blockers. The opponent accidentally fires off a Surgical Extraction, which is countered by their own Chalice. And they add a counter to one of their Ratchet Bombs. And let's see what they do here. So they play a land, and then they use their Seagate Wreckage to draw a card. Seagate Wreckage, really good in these mid-range wars for Tron decks. Hit another Eternal Scourge. Attack for 3, but again, we're just going to chump this here with the Elemental. Death Shadow, unfortunately, not something we can do anything with. So we're going to cast an off just to create another token, but we're actually in a bad spot here. The opponent's going to be able to set that Ratchet Bomb to 2 next turn, and then take care of our Young Pyromancer. Yet they don't. They draw a Dismember and they just kill it, so that allows them to hold the Ratchet Bomb for like Snapcaster Mage or something else later, and keep ticking the Ratchet Bombs up towards like a Tasker or Gurmag Angler. So we're really just kind of boned here. There's really no outs we have. If you don't want to stay for the rest of this, I can totally understand. I just, again I wanted to show it because it's a cool deck. I liked the use of the Serum Powder and Eternal Scourge. Also wanted to just use this match as an overly exaggerated reason to show why. You know, we had answers to many of these cards. Ratchet Bombs, Chalice of the Void. We have these cards in the sideboard that can handle this, that can fight through these things, but we did not. Now, as it comes down, I imagine this matchup would be difficult for us, would be a struggle either way. We're really going to be in a situation where we almost have to have a Temur Battle Rage to win. But again, you know, you still can play to your outs. You can still set yourself up to the best situation. Hopefully nobody felt like this was a waste of their time. The match itself felt a little bit like a waste of time to me when I played it, because I really handicapped myself to some extent by letting the tilt get to me. But again, not something that you need to do. So anywho, hopefully you enjoy, and we'll be back with hopefully some better Magic, some less tilted Magic later. If you want to see more matches in the league, just click on the link there to the left. Have a good one.